Welcome everyone. Today's webinar is on Invoices, Getting Started. This is our first webinar on Invoices, so we're going to take it slow and try and cover as much as we can. There will be other ones coming up as well. So we're going to go into FrameReady, and the first part that I want to show you is the setups that you have available for you. So there are a few things that you want to set up in the invoice section up in the top right hand corner under the Options tab. That's where we want to start. You can select to have an auto entry name on the invoice when it's created, and this is only when it's created by clicking on New Invoice button. From the invoice section. When you click on new invoice, this is the name that will autofill it. Otherwise, you have that option, of course, that whatever name is on the work order, whatever name is on the work order, that is the name that will go onto the invoice. So that is the other option. So this one only applies when it's a new invoice that doesn't have a work order created on it. There's also a section here where you can set in your terms, whatever you want them to be on every single invoice. You don't have to have something in there now. That is not mandatory. Also, you have the option down here where you can enter in a customer. And this is helpful if you have a lot of people that are walking into your business and you're really busy right now and they don't want to give you their name. So you can click on this, and what I had in here was a new customer. So rather than selecting cash or walk-in, because this is not going to be tracked at all, what I have is in the contacts file, I have a contact that's called valued customer, and there's nobody else named valued. So I could take that ID number, the 10373, and I can go back to the main menu and put that into my options here. So I'll use the edit button and go down here, 10373, there we go. And I like that little hyphen at the bottom because it's a separation line. And now when I come in and I create a work order, it would automatically put that record on for me called valued customer. So that's what it would do. And let's just go test that, make sure. New invoice. And you can see that it's automatically entered in valued customer. Now, the danger in that is that if you do want to enter somebody's name, and you could easily bypass this and say, oops, you know, it had a name in there and I forgot to do it. So if there isn't a name in there and it doesn't create that, by looking up that word, that first name is of valued, nobody else has that name, it just automatically pops it in. So those are two options available for you. Now, if we go back to the Options tab, these are the options under printing, and I'm going to talk about those in just a minute. Let's go to more options under general. If you sell a lot of retail items, you will probably want to set it up to go to the default, the rapid entry screen, which means, and I'll click on that button so you can see it, every time that you create a brand new work order, a brand new invoice, what it's going to do is it goes to this screen where it's designed so that if you have a barcode scanner, you're going to scan each item in quickly in rapid succession, and then they're all going to go down the list. If somebody needs multiples of an item, you're going to scan it in multiple times, and then just like on a grocery list, it's going to go all the way down. So when you click done, that's when it goes back to the regular screen that you want, and that screen was designed just so that you could rapidly enter in the retail items using a barcode scanner, because you have a lot of retail products that you sell large quantities of. So let's go back to done, and I'm going to go back to the main menu, and I'm going to take that off, and that was under more options, and that was the default to rapid entry screen. So again, we still have those other options that are in here, and now I'm going to take that out as well, clicking on it. And then once I've clicked on it, I'm going to just delete it so it's not in there. The other option in here is a prefix, and this is going to appear in front of any work orders that are added onto the invoice screen. This will print in front of the description of the work order. So if your work order title was Winter Sunshine, it would be framing, semicolon, and make sure you put that space in there if you're using it. And then it'll say Winter Sunshine or Summer Sunset or whatever the title of the art is that you're framing. For those of our customers who are in Canada or in Australia, we no longer use pennies. So you would want to have a check mark in this box to say that if you're giving out cash, it will round it to the nearest 5 cents. The printing options, now that's the next part that we wanted to take a look at. You have a number of different styles of printed invoices that you could print out. And if we take a look at them, I'm going to show you some of the ones that we have. So if you were to print out one, the one part formatted, okay, we'll do this one first. One part formatted, and this means the formatted means that it has all of these boxes all around the items. And that's what the formatted is. One part means that it's one single page that you would give to the customer when they walk out, or you can email it to them, or or hand it to them. And this one also has the images on it as well. So I've selected to have the images printed on there, which is another option in our formatting. Now, the other one that you could decide on is that you want to have a two-part and you don't want the images to show up. So this same invoice is showing now with all of the different items listed on there, but there's no image, because with the other one, and if I scroll back to it, you'll see that this has taken up more than one page because of the images that are on it, whereas this one has everything listed up top. This is also on the right-hand side a two-part invoice, which means that this bottom portion down here, the bottom third of the page, can be removed and kept in your cash drawer. So you would keep this bottom portion and the customer would keep the top portion. And that might save you paper for those people who have decided that they wanted to print out 2 copies of the invoice. So everything in the top portion basically is duplicated but condensed, making sure that we know the payment information and how they've paid for it down at the bottom of the screen. So that's one part on the left, two part on the right, and then we also have the one that is unformatted. So this is the one part invoice, but it's unformatted. Now this is for a different person because I wanted to put the work order due date on there, but you'll notice that the boxes are missing. And people use this one if they have a pre-printed invoice that they want to use. And this was designed back before inkjet printers, which were able to print out in full color. So they would have it pre-printed with their logo, and then all the boxes would be on here already, so that when you printed it out for the customer, all you had to do was put in that special page, and then it would print. So those are the different styles of printed invoices that you could be using. The other option is to show the due date on the printed invoice. And I know there are a number of people who've decided that they don't want the due date to show on the work order because they don't want it to show on the invoice. And you're robbing yourself of some vital information if you don't want the due date to show on the work order. That's your tools that you're using to make sure things get done on time. However, if you don't want them to show up in the invoice, click on the No button over on the right-hand side. And that means that the due date you have on the work order, so you know when it's going to be done, is not going to show up on the printed invoice. So you can still keep everything tracked of the dates of when things are urgent, when things need to be done, and all of your tracking can be done without having the customer asking, is it done yet, and calling ahead of time before it's ready. Okay, including the product image. So in your retail products file, in the purple section, you can have digital images stored and they will print onto the invoice, which is what we just saw. You also have the option to have images from the work order show up. Remember, it's only the first image at the top of the screen of the work order images that will show up, not all of them. Okay, and if you've taken that last image, or you've taken images of the damage, make sure that they are the ones that are further down on the list. The last photo that you've taken, or the one at the top of the list, is the one of the finished piece, if that's what you want to show. If you have a receipt printer, you will want to change this to say yes, so that you can use one of those small, like a grocery store receipt printer, or if you have a lot of small ticket items that you're selling, it's a good idea to have a receipt printer connected to your cash drawer. But I'm going to turn that off. Now there's a little trick here. If you've decided that you wanted to print out multiple copies of the invoices for you, maybe one goes for you, one goes to the accountant, one goes to somebody else, the customer, then if you decide you wanted to print anything more than one copy, then you need to turn off the show print dialog box before printing, because if you leave this set, your printer defaults will come up and your printer default is set to 1. So if you want more than one copy, you need to turn that show print dialog box off. I'm going to set it back to 1. And now the other tip here for you is that when you're learning the program, I would definitely set it on to pause on preview so you get a chance to look at it. As you go through the program, you may not need to pause on the preview. You can speed up the process a little bit by saying no. And what will happen then, and let's go ahead and do that, is that when I go to the invoice, and if I decide that I wanted to print out this invoice, let's go to one that actually has something on it. Okay, if I want to print this out, you'll see that the print display is over on the left-hand side because we've set it to no, it's not pausing on that screen. It will show the screen still, but then I still have the option to cancel or print. Okay, previously, and there's also the invoice options button is located on the left-hand side of the invoice screen. So if I click on it here, okay, and now I go back and say pause on preview, you'll see that when I click on the printer icon, it actually shows the full image of it there, and I must click the continue button in the top right-hand corner in order to see the print dialog box and then continue on. Now, if you decide that you want to speed things up even more, and I'll go back to the invoice options here and to print options, if you want to, during a busy time, speed it up, click on no again. And what will happen now is that the minute that I click on the printer icon at the top, it will automatically print out an invoice. I'm not going to see any preview. I'm not going to see any dialog box. It's just going to automatically print. So those are the options that you have available, and those are my tips for that is yes when you're learning, yes, no when you're halfway through, no, no if it's a really busy time and you want to keep things moving forward quickly. Okay, let's go back down to this section. Okay, and we're going to take another look. We'll go back to, we'll stay here for a moment. There's also a section called reward tabs. And if you decide that you want to use rewards for your clients, this is set to say in order to earn 1 point, a client must spend, and then you would enter in the amount here and how many dollars have to be spent before you redeem them. So this is an option that we will get into in another video, but that is available to you. Let's go back to the main menu. Another thing that you'll notice is that while I was in the invoice screen, okay, you'll see that there's a series of buttons at the bottom of the screen, and this is for QuickBooks. There's also a gray button here that's for QuickBooks as well, and it's gray because that means I can't move this to QuickBooks because I haven't set up the category for it. You'll also notice in the retail products file, there's a large green bar here as well. So some of this real estate is used by the QuickBooks, and if you're not using QuickBooks and all of these green bars and these extra things are showing up on your screen and you don't need them, then you can turn them off. And the way to turn them off is to go back to the main menu, and in the top right-hand corner, you're going to click on Setup Data. And then under the Fiscal tab, click on that and go right down to the bottom where you see the QuickBooks logo and click on the button to open the QuickBooks integration. And over here, you'll see that QuickBooks integration is turned on. Now, when I click it off and I close, and you'll have to use the little red X or the red circle to close it. Okay, and then we'll click done. And now when I go back to the invoice screen, you'll see that there isn't anything at the bottom. There isn't a gray button here any longer. And if I go to the products file screen, then you'll see that I don't have that green bar here any longer either. So that's an option that if you're not using that, you can turn it off and it just cleans up the screen a little bit. So let's go take a look at the invoice screen. And if I go to the invoice screen, I'm going to click on it and go there directly. And there are different components in the invoice screen. This screen, there are two parts to the invoice screen basically. This screen is what we call the invoice screen. It's a rather protected area so that anything here in the bottom portion of the screen cannot be changed. Any of the payments cannot be changed. These are all protected areas. These white fields, you can make changes to those. Or you can change the customer's phone number or email if you needed to add one in afterwards. But I cannot change the customer. So that protects me at this point in time. I can add an invoice note because, again, that is a white field. So only the fields that are actually white are the ones that you can type into. Any of the variegated fields are fields that are not accessible right now. In order to make changes to those areas, what you need to do is click on the data entry button. That goes to the second portion of the screen, which is the payment portion, which allows you to make changes. Now, because I'm on an older invoice, I'm showing another button at the top here that's called Allow this invoice to be modified. And this would happen you have an invoice that was perhaps created on February 28th, and now it's March 1st. So now, even though it's a day later, it's falling into a different pay recording period, which means it's from a previous month, and I really don't want to make changes to it. However, in this case, if you did, you click the button and now you can make changes. So this is what our screen would normally look like when we have the data entry screen. So this is the screen that you would go to for the data entry, where you can make changes to the line items that are on the invoice or to the payments that are listed down below. So we've got two screens that we're working from. We're going to go back and click on Done. We have our invoice screen, which is the front screen, and then we have the purple data entry screen. And let me just go find all last record. We'll go to a different one. Okay, purple data entry screen, and that takes us to the line items screen. And this is where you can make changes. So the parts of the invoice, that helps separate that out. The second thing is that there are different statuses for an invoice. And if I click on the Find button, that easily shows me the different statuses. So we have over on the right-hand side invoices that are paid in full or a deposit. So paid in full is easy to explain. They're all paid up. There's no balance owing. Deposit means that there has been a partial payment on the invoice and they have a deposit, whether that was done through a deposit-only invoice, which is something we'll talk about in another video, or if that was a deposit that you made directly onto that invoice, a partial payment. The other one is the unpaid one. All right, no payment has been made on this. There's another one for a refund where you issued a refund, money was owed to the customer. Okay, and the last one is an invoice that was voided. So those are the different statuses that the invoice could have. Whatever the invoice is, when you go to it, okay, and you've actually got something on the invoice and you've got a payment or not, or line items on it, you'll be able to see if it's paid or unpaid by the heading in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You'll also be able to see that in the list view. If we go to list view and look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that you can identify whether the status is refund, unpaid, paid in full. All of those are listed on the right-hand side, so it's easy to find them and easy to identify. Now, we're going to go back to the form view on the invoice, and I'm going to go right back to the last invoice that was created, list view, because one of the things I want to tell you about is how the terms field can affect your inventory that you're creating. So in the terms field, normally we might have net or net 30, but if a customer came in and they decided that they wanted to take something out, and I'm going to go click on the purple data entry button. And you know what, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to create a brand new invoice. So a customer has come into the store and decided that they would like to remove something. They think they're going to purchase it, and you've agreed that they can take it home on spec. So I'm going to enter in an item for us. Okay, so we have this Blooms of Summer that we've added in, and the customer's name, I definitely want to put that in there. Somebody named Wes. Okay, and that's in there. But now under terms, I'm going to select a different one, and that is called 48-hour approval. And this means that the inventory, while I'm on this screen, I'm selecting 48-hour approval. that means that the inventory for this item will not be updated. And when I click on Done, and I go back to the products file, and in here I've got my blooms of summer, and it says that I have 14 of these in stock right now. That item has not been removed from inventory. It has not been added to the quantity sold, and my last sold date is still back in 2020. So now I want to go back to that invoice. So it's a day later or 2 days later, and it doesn't automatically update the approval, the inventory after 48 hours. That's just the term that's used in there. It will stay there indefinitely. It will not update the inventory until you click on this terms and select something else. Okay, would you like to update the, and as soon as I clicked on it, it asked, would you like to update the product's inventory at this time? And I can say yes. The other option that I have is to click on that and change it to net while I'm in the data entry screen. So if I'd come into this screen instead and changed it from 48 hours to net, then when I clicked on Done, it would have updated the inventory. So now if I go back to inventory and I check the product, you'll see now that it is 13 instead of 14, and the last sold date is today's date. So I'm going to go back to the invoice screen. So that is the one called 48-hour approval. The other one that we have is called estimate or quote. Now, I would suggest that if you are using anything for framing, picture framing, that you're going to use proposal or estimate that is on the work order screen. However, if you're going to be selling out some art and it's an estimate and you want to give them an estimate just for the art and there's no framing involved at all, then in that case, we're going to click on the invoice and I'm going to use that same item and look it up. And now it's entered it onto the invoice, and this time I'm going to select that it's an estimate. And estimate or quote are basically the same thing. It won't make any difference which one it is. So I'm not taking a payment at this time. This is an estimate for the customer. This has not been removed from inventory, but I'm expecting them to purchase it. And now when I go up to the printer at the top of the screen and print this out, you'll see that instead of the word invoice at the top, it now says estimate. Okay, if I had selected quote, it would say quote, and the terms are listed right down here that this is an estimate. So if the customer does come back again and we decide that we want to change it, I would normally go to the terms, but you can click on that small drop down. Would you like to update the product inventory at this time? And I'll say yes. Okay, the inventory has been updated. I'm going to change it to net. But then, of course, if I'm changing that, then of course I also want to take a payment as well. So that's why I'm saying I would normally click on the purple data entry button and come back into here and then change it. If I was to change this back to estimate, it's not going to put the product back into inventory. That is not going to happen. If the customer came in and now I've taken this out of inventory and I want to return the product to inventory, after it's been taken out, then I would have to do a return where I could, if it was the same day that this happened, I would go back in here and re-enter that item in, and I would show that the quantity on that is -1. All right, and that puts it back into inventory again when I click the done button. So now when we go back to the product, instead of showing the 12 that it would have been before, it's now back to the 13 that it was originally, because I've taken 2 of them out and I put 1 back in. So, and we're going to be covering returns, refunds, and exchanges in another video. So this is the time when I would like to stop for a moment, and we're going to go and have a poll. And Chrissy is going to pull up our question of the day.
Sounds good. And then I can also let you know we have some questions.
Excellent.
All right, our quick poll. Which features do you use? Our question, actually we only have one question.
Okay.
Can a credit card transaction be rounded to the nearest 0.5?
So I guess the easiest answer to say is no. It will not round on credit card transactions. It only does that on cash transactions.
I'm going to close the poll now.
Okay.
And I'm going to share our results.
Okay. All right. So we've got, I can see that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So the features that people use, due date. I'm glad people are using the due date. Yeah. And selecting the correct tenders. Thank you. That's awesome. Oh, and PO number fields terms and not tax exempt. Wonderful. Yeah, you're making good use of the features that are in the invoice then. Thank you, Chrissy. Super. We're going to go on and take a look at some other things that we can do on the invoice. So I just wanted to cover the basics of creating the invoice so that if you are on the work order screen, of course, the way that you would want to create an invoice here is to go ahead and let's put in a customer. There we go. And that is that you would click on the button on the left-hand side of the screen to post everything on here to an invoice. And of course, you've got some great buttons below that to find that invoice later or print the invoice right from the work order. So I'm going to click on post to invoice. That's going to take everything and it's going to ask me, do you want to print a summary? And in most cases, I'm going to say, no, I do not want to print a summary. I only want to post it and that's it. A summary is helpful if the customer needs it for insurance purposes. But otherwise, I'm going to say post only, and it's going to go ahead and create the invoice for you based on the work orders that were created for that customer. And the rule is, of course, if it's the same customer on the same day, all of those invoice work orders will go on to the same invoice. Or if you've used a job number to group them together, then they will go on to the same invoice. You can also use the job number to separate work orders so that they'll go on to different invoices as well. Then the last thing you would need to do is enter a payment here. So I'm just going to go back and show you then on the work order screen where the job number is, so that if you wanted to use the job number to batch work orders together, you would use the job number in the top right-hand corner, clicking on that button in the top to see which numbers have been used, and you would find a number that hasn't been used. So I could pick number 40004 and use that, and that would either combine work orders together or separate them apart. So if I was to go to my list and take a look at the list, and I had multiple work orders for the same customer, as long as they're on the same day and for the same customer, they will go on to the same invoice. But if this customer decided that they wanted to go ahead just with one of these, and then you also have the option when you're posting to omit as well. So you don't necessarily have to use the job number in that situation. And if we go back down the list and find something, there we are. Okay, and if I say post to invoice, okay, and post only, it shows me that there are two orders here. And if I don't want one of them to go onto the invoice, I will use the omit button and choose the one that I do want to post to an invoice and continue. And now the invoice has been created just for that one work order, even though that customer had two work orders that were created on the same day. Once it has been posted to the invoice, click the done button. It's easy to go back directly to that item and click on the go button. And you'll notice that in the top right corner, it says unpaid. And if I go back to the work order using the go button in the top right-hand corner of the work order, it also shows that it's unpaid. And if I want to go directly back to that invoice, I'm going to click on find invoice and I go directly to it, which makes it easy for me to take my payment when the customer comes back in. So I'm going to click on done. The other way to create an invoice is a customer has just walked in and the only thing they want to do is purchase a retail product. So they don't need to have any framing done. There's no work that's being done, or this could be a service that you're having them, an installation that you want to have added on to something. So I'm going to click on new invoice in the top right-hand corner. And when I click on that, it automatically creates a blank invoice for me. So of course there is no customer on it at this time. However, if I wanted to create, add some items on here, and I'm just going to go through and find pencil, because this should work into some of the other things that I want to do. And I'm going to say that they're purchasing maybe 3 or 4 charcoal pencils. And of course, this would be faster if you had a barcode scanner that you're going to just scan into the item number field. And I'm going to select pencil again. And you can use the rapid entry screen to add all of these items in. So now that I've added a few of those items in, I've created the invoice. One of the other things I want to show you is about creating a discount for those items. So I'm going to leave that one here just for now, and I've entered those in. And I want to remove a retail product. Okay, so if I want to remove one of these products, I haven't clicked the done button. It hasn't been removed from inventory. All I need to do is use the teal colored button on the right-hand side to remove that product. There we go. So permanently remove this, and I'm going to say delete it. And now it's off the invoice. It's done. And I'm going to click done. It is going to ask me if I want to enter the customer information at this time, and I'm going to say no, because I want to go back and show you how to remove the work order. So that was how to remove a retail product from the invoice, but now I'm going to go back and remove this work order. So I'm going to say that Bonnie has changed her mind after it's been posted to an invoice, and she does not want to go ahead with the framing. So I'm going to click on the purple data entry button to go back to the area where I can make changes. And in this case, on that first line where you see the framing and the dancing, and it's got the labor that's non-taxable, it's separated it out. I'm not going to delete that one. I'm going to delete the top one because that's going to remove both of those items at the same time. And when I click on the delete button, it gives me the option to unpost this work order as if it was never on this invoice to begin with. So I'm going to click yes to that. And now this is a blank invoice, and that work order that was previously posted has no longer been posted. So I'm going to click done again. And this is where I would enter a note in here to say that this customer is no longer going to go ahead with this order, the reason why they canceled the order, possibly put the date in there, and then I would void the invoice. Okay, and might as well show you that now. The void button is in the top left-hand corner. And when I click on a void invoice, it's going to say, are you sure you want to void this invoice? And I'm going to say yes. So I've clicked void. Now, the other great thing about this is the customer has changed their mind yet again, and they picked up a retail product. I can still use this invoice by going back up to void invoice. I'm going to click on that again. And it's going to ask me, would you like to unvoid this invoice? And if I click unvoid, now I can go ahead and use that same invoice for a retail product that they are purchasing from me. So yeah, we'll throw something in there. Okay, so now they picked something else out that they wanted to purchase. And then I can take a payment and away we go. So it's easy to add an item onto the invoice. It's just as easy to remove it. It's just remembering to remove it properly. If you've already reduced the inventory by clicking on the done button, then you do not want to use that teal colored box to remove it. In that case, you want to, if it's a different month, you want to create a new invoice and do a refund or a return. And again, that will be covered in a different in video webinar that we're going to do. So the next thing that we want to do is take a payment. So once we're on that screen and we have the information entered in, moving down to the bottom of the screen is where we can enter a payment. So we're going to click on the button that says enter a payment. And if this was picture framing, you may want to select that you would only calculate 50%, but go ahead and select how they're going to pay for that. And if there are certain items in here that you don't want to use, you can always scroll down to the bottom and edit this list at any time that you need to. And whatever you want to put in there, that's fine. People put a lot of different things in there. Spell check the way you want to. If you want MC or if you want MasterCard, go ahead and change it. There are certain items on this list that you should not change or remove. and that is all of the items for the gift cards, okay, and gift certificates. Do not remove those. That's part of the FrameReady program. The rewards, the credit, store credit, and the credit memo. Actually, the store credit, those two are ones definitely that are part of the program. And also when you're issuing refunds, you need to use the refund section down here. So, and you can add more of them in if you need to. Just make sure that it says the word refund at the start of it. And those are the ones that should stay in the FrameReady program. So once you've selected the tender, and I'm going to go ahead and select something from this drop-down list. And then if I wanted to change the amount, you can either click in there and change it to whatever number you want it to be, or you can use the calculate 50% and you can see that it's changed it right now. Or as I've said, if I decide that I want them to pay $150, then I'm going to change that. Or they said, we'll put 150 on Discover Card and we'll put the rest of it on a different balance. So I've entered in the amounts that I need to enter. If this was a check that they were paying, then I might want to put in the reference number down here of what the check number was. Okay, or if this was a credit card transaction, I may want to put in the authorization number. Under no circumstances should you ever put in the credit card number in here. This is not a secured field, okay? So it is not PCI compliant, this field, so do not store credit card numbers in there. If this person was paying with cash, and we'll do that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and say done on this. Okay, they've entered in amount by check. If I want to take a second payment and split the payment out into a different portion, and let's say they're going to pay for cash, and the amount that they're going to give me is $200, okay, then it's going to calculate out the cash that I'm going to give them back. So that's the cash portion there. So I'm going to click on done. Okay, if for any reason you need to come back and change one of these items, you can use the edit button. Maybe you typed in the check number wrong and it was supposed to be a 5 or a 4, or you wanted to change the amount there. But clicking on the edit button will allow you to make changes on either one of these entries, any of the entries that are in there. So you can correct the information and have it correct always. So we've taken a payment, we've changed the tender, we've edited it when we needed to, and we've been able to recalculate the amount that the customer is going to be giving us cash and what the changes that we're going to give to them. So we're ready to give them a printed invoice. So at the top of the screen, we have the printer icon that we can use to give them an invoice. However, there's also an option here that we can give them a blind invoice, and that's by pressing down. You can see the tooltip there on the screen. If I press down on the Shift key, and then I click on the printer icon, this will give me a gift receipt saying that this is what has been purchased. Okay, it does not show the value of the product. It does show that it was paid for, but again, all of the payment amounts are out of there. And that's so that if the customer wants to bring it in and exchange it for a different product because it was a gift to someone, then they now have their gift receipt invoice that they can bring back to you and exchange it for a different product. So I'm going to click cancel on that. The other option is that if this customer has an email, and let's go to one. So if this customer has an invoice and I want to email the invoice to them, then what I would do is I would click on the icon on the top right-hand corner of the screen to email it to them, or I can go up to the top of the screen and click on the menu bar at the top where it says email, and then I can select PDF invoice. I find the button over here is just as easy, and when I click on that, because this is an unpaid invoice, it automatically pulls up the message that I have set up on the main menu under the invoice options, and you can edit those at any time that you want. It's going to attach it as a PDF, and then I can send it to the customer. If you wanted to add in any other special messages, I'll be here late if you want to stop by after work, or looking forward to seeing you, whatever message you want to send to them, you can send it to them. The other thing that you can do is that if this is a paid in full invoice, so we'll take a payment again, and this time we'll just enter the full amount, and I want to say done, print invoice here. Okay, I can go directly to print the invoice. So we'll do that so you can see what the invoice looks like, continue, and then go ahead and print it. Or if the customer has an email address, I would have just said done, go to form view. And now that I'm in the top right-hand corner, and when I click on this, it's going to give me the option to send a note. And this is a thank you note. Because it's paid in full, I may want to ask the customer to give us a referral. So in that case, then I would have been listing on this email all of the different places where the customer could give us a referral, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Google, any of those places where they can give you a referral. Okay, and I'm going to say cancel on that one. So those are the places where you can send out the invoice, either printing it out or you can email it to them, either one of those two options. Okay, Chrissy, it's time for another poll that we can run and see if there are any other questions.
I was going to say drum roll, please, but I was muted.
Oh.
Okay, so this is which features do you use part 2? So the same question, different answers. And we do have a couple questions, Carol.
Yeah.
Why do discounts from added to the work order not appear on the invoice?
They should appear on there. If you've given a total percentage discount on the whole order, that will appear under the percentage section. However, if you've given a discount on individual items, then it will not appear. And the reason for that is because on the invoice, you do not have a breakdown of whether they receive 10% off the fillet only. On the invoice, it just shows the framing of waterfall, and that's it. Okay, so if you've given an individual discount, it will not appear. If you've given a discount, a percentage discount for the whole work order, it will appear. If you've given a dollar discount, it will not appear. So those are the rules for the discounting and how they appear.
And I'm just sharing the answers to the poll.
Okay, excellent. And okay, great. So the subtotal buy and the reward points are things that we're going to be talking about in another webinar. And if people aren't using them, then maybe after that webinar, you might want to think about using them. But statement for customers, great. And packing list. Okay, excellent. Super. And yeah, and the packing list that people have said that they're using, let's go up to the top here. At the top right corner of the screen, you'll see the packing list. And if I go back, let me just go back to one that has a few items on it. Okay, and I had one in here. There we go, there's a few items on there. So if you click on the packing list button at the top center right of the screen, it will give you a listing of all the items without the prices on there. So it's just a packing list. There is a disclaimer that you can change on the main menu under setup data in footnotes, and that will change the message that's on the packing list. Also, if you wanted to change the message that's on your printed invoice, that appears down in the bottom left-hand corner, that too is in the main menu under Setup Data, Footnotes tab. And you can change that. There's quite a bit of space that's available there for those disclaimers that you want to enter in. Excellent. So the discounts, and I'm glad we're on this invoice because this is where I wanted to show you, there's a couple of different things that you can do for discounts. And that was a good question that was leading into this. So if we have the items, retail items that are on sale, it's a good idea to enter those items in first to give them the discount. So if there is a discount of a certain percentage off on those items, then I would enter that discount in now. Before, and you can see the discount has been applied to those items, before I enter in the items that are not one of those items, and it's going to put the item in, but this item is not discounted. So any of the items that would receive a discount ahead of time, put those discounts in, discounted items in first, apply the discount, and then enter in any retail products that do not have a discount. The discount, as I mentioned on the work order screen, so if we were to go to a work order and we're going to find one, and if you wanted to find, this is a great tool too, find all of the work orders that have not been posted to an invoice yet. They're available to you, and possibly have been completed. Even worse, that they've been completed and you haven't received any money for them yet. Then you can go to that work order, and if this person has received a discount, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a percentage discount, that will show up in there, and that will appear on the invoice. If you've entered in a dollar discount, the dollar discount will not appear on the invoice. And the reason for that is because in the dollar discount field, let's go back here. So it's 1,273. If I was going to give them a dollar discount of $2.73, so it's an even thousand, that discount does not appear on the invoice because it's a dollar amount and there's no place on the invoice that would be able to show that. If the customer has received a discount on one particular item in here, and let's just say we're only going to discount the stretching, and we've gone over to the discount field and given them 10% off the stretching, that too will not appear on the printed invoice because the only thing that shows up on the invoice is this one line saying that this is the title of the piece. So if I go back up here and I say that I'm going to give them 15% off here, this 15% will show up on the invoice. Post to invoice, click post only, okay? And I'm going to omit those other items. We'll just put this one item on there. Okay, and you can see the 15% is there and the savings shows up as well. So those are the rules about the discounting. So if you wanted to discount afterwards, so if there was another work order that I did want to add on here, and then I wanted to give them a discount, you can do that after the fact. So I'm going to go back to the contact file, find that person, go to their work orders, and then just click all work orders. Much easier. So going back to this one work order, I want to add that onto the invoice. The customers changed their mind, of course, and I'm going to add that 344 onto that invoice. So I'm going to go to the invoice, click the purple data entry button, and on the left-hand side, I'm going to use the magnifying glass to put that item in, 0344. And then it's going to look up not only that item, but by using the magnifying glass, it looks up any other items. If there was art with it, if there was non-discounted labor, it would look up that as well. My understanding is that if you're entering in just into the item number box, it's not going to do the full lookup of all of the other items that are associated with it. But if I do want to give that customer discount, you can click directly into that field and give them the discount here as well. So there's the other way to do the discounts. There is an email that's going to be in your email that we're sending out. There is a link in there that's going to take you to an article to say, if you can get away from doing discounts, it makes it more profitable for you. And it's full of ideas on other things to do other than giving discounts while increasing the value of the sale to the customer so that they don't ask for the discount. And that's a great way to do it. Going back to the invoice screen, there's some tips and tricks that I wanted to point out just before we finish up. One of them is this total due number in the top right hand corner. And if I go back to my list view, there's a great button here that says find and sort unpaid invoices. If you haven't used that one before, it's a great way to find all of them. The headings will sort out alphabetically. And when I look at a customer's invoices here, I could go to any one of them that's on here. And when I look at them in the top right hand corner, you'll see that there's a number that's very large in red, but down here for the balance that's due, it's smaller amount. So it's not the balance due of one invoice, it's of all of the invoices. And by clicking on that red number, you now find all of the invoices for that one customer. So that's one of my favorite buttons to be able to use. The other thing that you may need to be aware of is that if you needed to change the tax amount, so this happens to people, you were supposed to change the tax amount on a certain date and you didn't, and invoices were created at the wrong tax amount. If you need to change that, you can. You can go to the purple data entry button and down at the bottom of the screen, and if it It can't do it right now because it's showing allow this invoice to be modified. So when I click on that button and I'm in the regular one, you can actually click down here. And if the tax rate has changed and this invoice falls into the period when you should have been charging the new tax rate, you can go back to those invoices that were created under the incorrect tax rate and change them. So that would make it easier for you to be able to do that. Okay. So those are just 3 of the things that I really like, the unpaid, being able to change the tax rate, and then in the list view, this wonderful button that says find and sort quickly all of your unpaid invoices. And are there any other questions that people have, Chrissy?
Yes, I have one last question, and they're asking, why would you have a work order not invoiced? If customer is going to go ahead, wouldn't you invoice in order to take a deposit or full payment? Perhaps you have a scenario.
Yes. Okay. So I do know that there are most customers, and I would recommend that when you've created a work order, you're automatically going to post it to invoice and take a deposit of at least half. And that means that they're going to cover the expense of the materials that you have to purchase and you're not out of pocket for that. The other tip is do not post an invoice until you are actually ready to receive money from the customer. However, I do know that there are people out there that say, you know what, it's a really good customer. I know that they'll pay for it later and I don't need to invoice them right now. So they're a really old customer, maybe before you started using a computer software program. So for some reason, there are times or cases where you may not take a payment right away, or the customer, you haven't posted to invoice right now because the customer told you that they're going to bring in another piece the next day or next week, and then they don't. So that now you have that work order that has not been posted to an invoice. So those situations can happen either by accident or on purpose. So that's why I really like being able to do that find and locating anything that is completed and not posted, or even if it's incomplete and hasn't been posted, or if you just want to find the ones that are not posted. Okay, and that will find all of the invoices in your list that have not been posted to an invoice yet. Thank you everyone so much for attending the Invoices Getting Started webinar.